My husband brought his boss over for dinner. Then he told me to pretend I was the maid. I was standing at the stove, wearing my favorite dress, the one my husband once said made me look like his entire world. I had spent the whole afternoon preparing dinner, hoping to make the evening special. He had called me earlier that day and mentioned he was bringing someone important home. I assumed it was a friend or maybe a colleague. I never expected what came next. The door opened, and in walked my husband, all smiles, followed by a well-dressed man with a serious face. My husband looked at me for a split second, his eyes cold, almost distant. Then, without hesitation, he said the words that would change everything. "This is my boss, Mr. Langston. Just follow my leads, pretend you're the maid tonight." I froze. At first, I thought I had misheard him. Pretend I was what? A maid? In my own home? The same home I had decorated, cleaned, and loved for years? My hands started to shake, but I nodded. Not because I agreed, but because I was too stunned to process what was happening. I played along. I served them dinner. I poured the wine. I smiled when his boss complimented the food, and I swallowed the lump in my throat when my husband said, "She's good at following instructions." I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. But something held me back. Maybe it was the way Mr. Langston kept glancing at me with curiosity. Or maybe it was the strange look on my husband's face, like he was hiding something deeper than just shame. I kept quiet. But in that silence, I made a decision. Because what my husband didn't know was that I already had a secret of my own. My name is Clara. I've been married to Ryan for 6 years. When we first met, he was charming, thoughtful in a way that made me feel seen. He used to surprise me with little notes, make my coffee just the way I liked it, and tell me I deserved the world. But somewhere along the way, that man disappeared. Ryan had been under a lot of pressure at work lately. I knew he was chasing a promotion, trying to prove himself to this new boss. Still, nothing could have prepared me for what he did that night. Pretending I was the maid? In front of a stranger? In our own home? As I moved around the table, refilling glasses and picking up empty plates, I noticed the way Mr. Langston watched me. Not in a disrespectful way, but like he was trying to piece something together. He asked simple questions. "How long have you worked here? Do you cook like this every night?" I answered softly, keeping my eyes down, while Ryan quickly filled the silence with awkward laughter and forced conversation. I could tell he was nervous. The weirdest part? He never looked me in the eye after giving that order. Not once. That's when I realized something deeper was going on. This wasn't just about impressing his boss.
No.
Ryan was hiding something or protecting something.
I just didn't know what yet.
After dinner, I quietly slipped away to the kitchen. My hands were still shaking as I rinsed the dishes. I could hear the two of them laughing in the living room, but it all sounded distant, muffled, like I was underwater. I looked at my reflection in the dark kitchen window. I didn't recognize the woman staring back. Somewhere in the routine of keeping everything together, making sure Ryan had clean shirts, warm meals, a tidy house, I had slowly vanished. But now something was waking up inside me. Something fierce. Because what Ryan didn't know was that earlier that day, I had received a message. From someone I never expected to hear from again. Someone who knew the version of me that existed before this quiet, polite version he had shaped. And that message was the beginning of everything unraveling. The message had come through an old email account I hadn't opened in years. The subject line read only one word. Ready? At first, I thought it was spam. But then I saw the sender's name, Daniel. My heart nearly stopped. Daniel was part of a life I had buried long before I met Ryan. He was the one person who truly knew me before the quiet dinners, the polite smiles, the carefully folded laundry, and rehearsed gratitude. We hadn't spoken in nearly 8 years. The last time I saw him, I had walked away from everything we'd built, chasing the stability I thought I needed. That stability had turned into a life where I couldn't even be myself in my own home. I couldn't stop thinking about that email as I wiped the counters that night. I kept wondering, how did he find me?
Why now?
In the living room, I could still hear Ryan and Mr. Langston talking. Their voices were low, serious now. Something about company budgets, numbers being off. Ryan sounded tense, like he was explaining something he wasn't supposed to be explaining. I moved closer to the doorway, careful not to make a sound. That's when I heard Mr. Langston say, "Look, Ryan, if this backfires, it's your neck on the line. Not mine." My stomach turned. Ryan had always been ambitious, but I didn't realize he was making risky decisions at work. Suddenly, pretending I was the maid didn't feel like just an embarrassment. It felt like a cover-up. I stepped back and returned to the kitchen. 100 thoughts were running through my head. Ryan hadn't told me anything about trouble at work. He just kept saying, "Everything's fine," while he buried himself in late-night phone calls and silent dinners. And now, I couldn't ignore it anymore. There was more to his act than just shame or status. He needed to present the perfect image tonight, not just to impress, but to survive something I didn't yet understand. And maybe Daniel's message wasn't random either. Maybe he knew something or was warning me. I didn't have answers yet, but one thing was clear. Ryan wasn't just pretending tonight. He was hiding something big. Later that night, after Mr. Langston finally left, Ryan came into the kitchen acting like nothing had happened. He smiled, kissed me on the cheek, and said, "You were amazing tonight." "Seriously, thank you." I just nodded, forcing a tight smile. I wanted to scream, to ask him how he could humiliate me like that, but I stayed quiet. Not because I was afraid of him, but because I wanted to see how far he was willing to go with this lie. He poured himself a drink and sat down at the kitchen island, looking exhausted. "It's all going to be okay now," he said softly, more to himself than to me. "I think I've bought us some time." Bought us some time? The word stuck in my head like thorns. I couldn't shake the feeling that things were far worse than he was letting on. And the way Mr. Langston had looked at me, it was like he already suspected something. Like he wasn't buying the story Ryan was selling. I waited until Ryan fell asleep on the couch with the TV still playing. Then I quietly slipped into the bedroom and opened my old laptop. My hands trembled as I logged into that dusty email account. There was another message from Daniel. "He's in deeper than you think. Call me. Don't trust anyone." I stared at the screen, my pulse racing. Daniel never used dramatic words. He was calm, steady, grounded. For him to say that, it meant something serious. I picked up my phone, but didn't dial yet. I needed to be sure. So I did something I hadn't done in years. I went through Ryan's briefcase. And that's when I found it. A printed contract. With a signature that wasn't his. A loan agreement for an amount that made my stomach drop. And somehow my name was on it. He had forged my signature. The blood drained from my face. This wasn't just about pretending anymore. This was fraud.
Debt.
Maybe even something criminal. I stood there in the dark hallway, holding the papers, listening to Ryan snore in the living room like everything was normal. But nothing was normal anymore. And tomorrow, everything would change. Because now I had to choose, stay quiet and protect the man who just betrayed me, or take back control of a life I never really owned. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the forged contract with my name scribbled in handwriting that wasn't mine. My signature, copied so well, it could fool a bank, maybe even a court.
But not me.
My own husband had stolen my name, my trust, my future. As the sky turned pale outside the window, I heard Ryan stir on the couch. I quickly hid the papers in a folder beneath the dresser. My heart was racing, but my face stayed calm. I needed answers before I made any move. And I knew I couldn't ask Ryan. Not yet. Later that morning, after he left for work, I dialed the number Daniel had left in his second message. My fingers hesitated over the call button, but I pressed it. It rang once.
Twice.
Then a familiar voice answered. "Clara?" The moment I heard him say my name, the years between us disappeared. I didn't know what to say first, but he jumped in. "I didn't mean to scare you with the emails," he said. "But you need to know, you're listed as a guarantor on a loan taken out under a shell company. I only saw your name because I was doing some background checks for another case. I had no idea it was you until I traced the address." I felt cold all over. "You're saying he used my name for a company that doesn't even exist?" Daniel's voice dropped. "Clara, Your husband is in serious financial trouble. This isn't just about debt. It looks like someone's been laundering money, and he's tied to it, either willingly or as a fall guy. I couldn't breathe. It all started to make sense. The rushed dinners, the fake Maid story, the stress, the silence, the need to impress Mr. Langston. This wasn't about pride or career anymore. It was about survival. And somehow, Ryan had dragged me into it. I have copies of the documents, Daniel continued. Bank transfers, forged papers, everything. If you stay silent, they'll come for you too. He's made you part of this whether you knew it or not. I hung up the phone with my hand shaking. For a moment, I just sat there, the weight of everything crashing down around me. My marriage wasn't just broken, it was dangerous. Then came the knock on the door. I froze. It was too early for visitors. I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened it cautiously, and there stood Mr. Langston. But this time, he wasn't smiling. He didn't ask to come in. He just said, "We need to talk. Alone."
Now.
I stepped aside and let him in, my mind spinning. Because the way he looked at me wasn't professional. It wasn't polite. It was personal. And in that moment I knew. There was still something Ryan hadn't told me. Something even Daniel didn't know. Mr. Langston stepped inside and closed the door behind him, his expression tight and unreadable. I stayed silent, heart pounding, waiting for him to speak. He looked around the living room slowly, then turned back to me. "Clara," he said, his tone quieter now, "I know your husband forged your signature." I blinked, caught off guard. How do you know?" He gave a slight nod. "Because I've been investigating him for months. Ryan's been under review. What he doesn't know is, I'm not just his boss. I'm part of the company's internal affairs division. And he's been digging himself deeper than I think even he realizes." I stared at him in disbelief. "So you knew all along?" "I suspected," he said. "But when I saw you last night, how uncomfortable you were, it confirmed something. You're not part of this, Clara. But your name is everywhere in the documents he submitted. He used you to build the lie." He reached into his coat pocket and handed me a small flash drive. "This contains everything we've gathered. Emails, bank transfers, signatures. He's going down, but you need to decide how you want to be involved. If you cooperate with us now, we can clear your name." My knees felt weak, but I stayed upright. It was all too much. The man I shared a life with had betrayed me in ways I couldn't even measure, and now I was holding proof of it in my hand. Later that evening, when Ryan returned home, I didn't confront him with anger. I sat him down and simply said, "I know everything." His face changed instantly. The panic, the guilt, but then something else. He leaned back in the chair, almost calm. "I was going to tell you," he said, "but it's too late now." And then, before I could say another word, he added quietly, "Langston isn't who you think he is either." I froze. "What do you mean?" Ryan looked me in the eye. "He's not trying to save you, Clara. He's trying to save himself. You were never supposed to be part of this. But now you're the only witness." That's when I realized this wasn't over. Not even close. Because I wasn't just a wife caught in the middle of a lie. I was now the key to exposing both of them. I sat across from Ryan, my hands gripping the flash drive in my lap, his words echoing in my ears. "You're the only witness." I could barely believe what I was hearing. Just when I thought I had uncovered the truth, another layer had peeled back, darker and more dangerous than before. For a long moment, we just sat in silence. Then I stood up. "You used me, Ryan. Both of you did. But I'm done being the quiet one." The next day, I met Daniel in a quiet parking lot near his office. I handed him the flash drive and told him everything, what Mr. Langston said, what Ryan confessed, and what I suspected now. Daniel listened closely, never interrupting. When I was finished, he gave a tired sigh. "This is bigger than either of them expected," he said. "But now we have everything we need." Over the next few weeks, everything changed. Internal investigations at the company blew open both men's involvement in financial fraud. It turned out Mr. Langston had been manipulating employees into forging documents to cover up his own dealings, and Ryan had followed his lead, hoping to secure a future he couldn't afford. The fake loan, the pressure, the act of making me pretend to be the maid, it was all part of keeping up appearances long enough to survive. But the truth came out. My name was cleared. I wasn't charged, and with Daniel's help, I'd built a life around a man I thought I knew. But somewhere along the way, I forgot who I was. That night he asked me to pretend to be the maid. It broke something inside me. But maybe it also woke me up. Now I live in a small apartment across town. It's quiet, simple, but it's mine. And every morning, I make my own coffee just the way I like it. I sit by the window, watching the world go by, and I remember how far I've come. I don't need someone else's name to define me anymore. I have my own story now. One that no one can rewrite.